Perfect.
And I'm gonna try to show you what I look like underneath right here, right quick. Alrighty, so let me get my light here. All right, so you can kind of see how we're sitting, looking straight down our link arm right there. You can see I got my tombstones kind of turned. You know, they're turned like that. That way, it's kind of running as straight as possible. So you get under here. There you go. So you can see right there, we're about 1.5. Well, from here it looks like almost just shy of 2 marks. 2 marks out on the center line. I don't know if we'll be able to see this one on the other side here. Can't really see it, but I assure you they are matched up and lined up well. So I'm gonna go and throw some tacks on that boy, and then we'll go on and line up the other side the same way, get some tack welds on there, and then we'll be able to jack this dude up and cycle the suspension, which super excited for that. Well, let me tell you something that's pretty disheartening. So I made all my links to where they're all cut to be the exact same length, okay? I put each one of them together and I set each one of them where the exact same length, which is what they should be. You should be able to put them on, tack them in place, that way everything is good and true and square. Now, in order to do that, you have to start with your axle dead center between the frame rails. Well, I thought I had it dead center between the frame rails, so I built the top and I got these tacked in place, and I measured them off my mark right here that I had marked as center. I measured to where they were mounted, and they were both right. So then I come over here and I go to put my lower link arm on, and I kept having to mess with it. It wouldn't quite line up right to get where I wanted. I couldn't really figure out why, and I actually adjusted it in and out a little bit to kind of get it where I wanted, and I got it tacked in place. Even though my spidey senses were tingling at that point, I still just didn't listen. So I go over and I'm working on getting my other one ready to tack in, and it will not line up where it's supposed to, and I can't figure for the life of me what's going on with this stupid thing. So I'm adjusting and I take some measurements, and I just can't figure out what's going on, why this thing won't hit where it's supposed to. To the point where I measured to see if the axle was right between the rails as far as front to rear. So I adjusted the top link a little bit to move the axle forward a little bit, forward or back. I don't remember at this point in time. And I couldn't get that thing really where I wanted it, so I didn't tack it in. So I thought, something told me, I don't remember what at this point, to just jack the axle all the way up to the frame where it touched the bottom of the frame to make sure that, when I was adjusting it front to rear, because I've got my center line mark on my C-notch, and see if my center line marks line up right. Well, in the process of doing that, when I jack it up, I realized that the mount for that link arm is like touching the frame, the inside of the C-notch over there, and then on this side, I had like a big ass gap, and I was like, what are we doing? What is going on? And I was absolutely disgusted, as you could imagine. And so I start looking at it and kind of taking some rough measurements, and I measure from here to here. My measurement's right. From this mark to here, my measurement's right, like it's supposed to be. And I can't figure for the life of me what's going on. And then it kind of dawns on me that the only way that can be that way is if the entire axle is shifted sideways. So I measure at that point in time from the backing plate to the other backing plate. And I'm sorry, not from backing plate to backing plate. I measure from the backing plate to the outside of my frame rail right here, which is going to be the same from one side to the other. It should be if the axle's centered. And no, it's not. So then I come and I measure here to here. Somehow, somewhere along the way, and I've run into this before, when I come by and I get an hour to try to work on this thing, I jump in here and I try to get something done quick, and I miss something small, and it winds up really being a kick in the teeth down the line, and that's exactly what happened right here. somewhere along the line, I guess the axle shifted, and I just didn't realize that it had moved. So I started tacking everything together on it, and the reason why that arm wouldn't line up right is because it was too long. That's why it wouldn't get where it needed to be, because the whole axle is almost an inch too far to this side. So what I've got to do now is pull all my arms back out, adjust them, make sure they're all back centered up at the exact same length. I've got to cut these mounts off. I've got to cut this mount off. I've got to cut this mount off under here. I've got to I'm going to roll the axle out, or at least get the frame jacked up enough so that I can make a new center line on my axle, so that I can make sure that when I get my mark put on, that I'm dead center where I should be. Then I'm going to make sure that I am dead center in the frame rails and kind of start all over again. I'll have to clean the tack welds off the tombstones, and I have to clean them off the axle, and kind of back to the drawing board. I am going to go ahead and do all that off camera, because you've already kind of seen me do a lot of it once. But once we get the axle back in here, get it centered up where it's supposed to be, then we'll come back and kind of see where we're at that point. Pretty disgusted at the moment, I ain't gonna lie, because I don't get a ton of time to work on it every day like I wish I did. So obviously, with that being said, then to have to go back and spend time to redo something that I thought was done, not to mention the letdown that I feel, because here I thought I was tacking these lower mounts on, and we were going to be able to build some bag mounts and hopefully get to see this thing kind of wrapping up back here. So pretty defeated at the moment, but as part of it, I guess, I just tried to go a little too fast when I got going, but it is what it is. I'll take all this stuff off and get it going again, and hopefully when y'all come back, I've got a smile on my face again, and we're back moving again. So say a little prayer for my sanity, and we'll see you in, it'll be just a millisecond for you. All right, so I said I wasn't going to film any of this, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if I'm going to show any of this when I edit it, but just in case I decide to, I figured I'd kind of give you a little heads up on what I'm doing. So you'll see this link arm is sitting in place. It's a little bit further out now than what it was. I was able to get a little bit better angle there than what I had previously. Now, in doing that, I recut this inner tombstone right here. So you can see the bottom of it right here has got a little foot that sticks down now. This part right here sits up on this outer part of the housing right here. This part extends all the way down to the top of the axle itself. So I did that so I can just get a better weld on it and everything. I've got pretty much exactly, like this is a 1/4 inch piece of steel. I can stick that straight down. I've got a 1/4 inch of clearance to that bolt head, which should be more than plenty, because the only time it'll ever be very close will be when that thing is just all the way down, when it's fully aired out. Because if you were to go side to side or anything, if this is the side that's coming up, it's going to actually rotate in. So it should never hit. It shouldn't be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and tack this together, and we'll stick this other one on and get it tacked together, and then hopefully we'll go do the outers. Everything will line up this time. So like I said, I don't know if I'm going to put this in or not. This might be just a little bonus footage. Hopefully it works out good. So back to our regular scheduled program. All right, so I kind of got the axle. I got it all squared up in here. I've got it tacked in place with 2 pieces of metal, one off each frame rail. I've got all 4 link arms set up at the exact same length, so I can kind of start trying to roughly figure out what's going on here. So I'm going to jump under here and see if I can sort something out. Okay, so finally, after all that, so I got my axle centered up. Got my center line marked here. Measure 13 3/4, 13 3/4. I measured from my link arm mount back to the end of my axle tube. That measurement lines up on each side, so I know my axle is Newton square. I went ahead, I tacked this little metal bar here, tacked one on the other side to kind of lock that thing in. Now, I went ahead and I matched all the link arms up to the same length. Then when I went to put the lowers on, I could have gotten them to line up, but they were actually a little bit behind the axle, just a touch, a little bit behind the center line. And I just really want them on center line. That way, if I do need to alter my pinion angle or something, it's a lot easier to do. So I used this one kind of as my reference point, and I adjusted and I adjusted and I adjusted, and obviously I could had a good bit of adjustment just by using my hind joints, but I didn't want to adjust it in or out too excessively far. So I came up with a compromise. I went back, I cut 3/8 of an inch off of this arm right here, because at the end of the day, that's what I wound up shortening it, was 3/8 of an inch. So what I'll do now is I'll jump over on the other side. I'm going to shorten that one 3/8 of an inch, which also means that I'm going to come in and I'll shorten both of these as well. This cross member is only loosely tacked in place, so I can cut it back loose and I can move it back if as needed. That way, all of my link arms are all still the same length. So my next goal right now is I'm going to grab that lower from that other side. I'm going to cut it and shorten it up, and then get it kind of clamped in place with a quick grip. And I ain't welding anything this time. I'm going to clamp it all in place with a quick grip, and then once I get both of them tacked in place good where I'm happy, then I'll go ahead and I'll put a good tack on to hold them in place. So just give you a little quick update on what's actually going on there. So I'm going to get back to working on this other side now. All right, so after all that, finally back where I hope we would be when we stopped. So get the axle where it would measure right like it was supposed to be, and get everything back centered up where it was supposed to be. I did cut 3/8 of an inch off my links to get them all kind of where they would center right, or where I wanted them. And I did move that front cross member. I did move it back just a little bit so I could keep all my links the same length. And so I could have my links mounted dead center on top of the axle. I didn't want them canted one way or the other there. So But everything is all finally tacked together and in place. I'm really happy with all that. So now I'm going to pull all the link arms back off and throw a couple more tacks on them just so they're locked in real good. I don't want to tack them with the hind joints on here because you get like a little burr or something on there and it'll kind of wear against the nylon and stuff that's on the joints themselves. So pop all the links off. We'll throw another couple tacks on every tab so it holds up good. Then we got to throw all the links back on, cut loose these pieces of metal that are holding the axle in place. Then I'll cycle the axle up and down real good with it centered, and then each wheel up and down real good to make sure nothing's binding, make sure everything works good. And then hopefully, if all that goes well, which it should, we can start making some bag mounts and stuff and start getting on to some other parts of this axle build finally. Now that I'm not screwing myself over, taking 3 steps back for every 1 step I take forward. So, back to where we were weeks ago. Whew. It's tough when you make things harder on yourself along the way. Back in it the way they were supposed to. That was good. Now you saw me go ahead and cut the bars off a little bit. The bolt heads just barely caught the underside of the C-notch just enough so it made a pain in the butt to try to get them out. So I jacked it up just enough so I could kind of slide them through there, get it through a little easier. But I can't imagine right now the back of this truck ever being lifted higher than it is right now. mean, I don't know. We'll see. But just raising it up like this, everything seemed to work just fine. The axle rotated like it was supposed to. Everything looks good. So now I'm gonna, one at a time, I'll jack that side up, this side up, and put it on jack stands so that I can get it off of the skateboard, so that then from there can actually fully articulate this thing and see what it's going to do here. So I'm going to see if I can hunt down some jack stands.